and it's going to be negative for exporting. So the importance of platform competition and why it is different from pipelines. If you're going to think in terms of pipelines, you're going to be outsmarted by platforms. Why? Because platforms are very good at shape shifting, and this takes everybody by surprise. It's also called platform envelopment. So, for instance, what happens is the mobile phone comes out, the Apple phone, and it eats up the Palm Pilot and the Game Boy. You know, goodbye Palm Pilot, goodbye Game Boy, because you can do that on your phone. But the makers of Palm Pilot and Game Boy never thought their competitor will be a mobile phone company. The same with Amazon. It's an online book retailer which now is entering into creating supermarkets. The supermarket business never thought an online book retailer would be their biggest competitor. Google, an online search engine, is now entering into driverless cars. The automobile industry never thought their competitor will be an online search engine. We see the same with the Apple iPhone. It's killing the Swiss watch industry. There are more Apple watches that are sold in the world today than the output of the entire Swiss watch industry. If you ask the guys in Switzerland if they thought it was, who's going to be their major competitor, they would have said, well, maybe it's the Italian or the Japanese watch industries. They would never have told you that it was, or expected that it would be a mobile phone company that would be killing them off. So, we have now platform capitalism, as it is called, and it means that either you have to compete with a platform or you'll have to compete on a platform. And if you compete as a pipeline with a platform, well, good luck to you. You have to really then know what's going on and know your story and know where you're going to add value, so the competition becomes much fiercer. But at the same time that we have this threat of platform firms and superstar firms, we have zombie firms. These are old firms that normally they are large, but they have problems meeting interest. They are not profitable. They are being kept alive largely by having access to cheap finance. Interest rates now in the world is almost zero. Banks have been bailing out their clients. There's been money pumped into the US and to Europe to keep companies afloat. And between 2 and 10% of firms in the OECD are classified as zombies. 100,000 zombie firms in the UK, 18% as this graph shows in the US. The problem is that all these zombie firms, and I think there must be thousands in South Africa, and they are keeping new entrants from entering the market. So they are stifling new entrepreneurship and new small business growth. You can see this, for instance, in the fact that at the same time that you see this increase to 18% of US zombie firms, new entry rate of firms in the US has declined precipitously. And we see this in the rest of the world. It's called best versus the rest dynamics, that you have about 5% of firms in the OECD in manufacturing firms in the OECD are frontier firms. Their productivity grows high, but the rest, 95%, are called laggard firms. Yeah, they are very unproductive. They should actually be exiting the market, but they don't. Now, the consequences of superstars and zombies is that, as I said, we are not living in this, this rumor that we have a hugely innovative world where we have all this, disruptions of technology all the time, and companies have to invest all the time in innovation to stay ahead. No, already, as I showed you, labor productivity growth has declined. And we also find studies showing that, innovation, R&D in the United States have been declining in terms of its effectiveness by 5% per year. Entrepreneurship as well. If you look at a list of Europe's 100 most valuable companies, none of them were actually created in the past 40 years. There are no new superstar firms, no new big companies created in 40 years. We're really in the doldrums in terms of innovative new companies. You can read more about this in this book by Ericsson and Weigel called The Innovation Illusion, which I think would be very important to take into consideration policies. But what is actually worse is that we live now in a winner-take-all world. The reason is that these software and brands, in terms of digital technology, is skill-biased, it is scale-biased, it is capital-biased. So it leads to raising wage premiums for those with the skills to use the technology. It leads to rising concentration and a decrease in the labor share for those who can increase the scale. And it is capital biased. It leads to automation and to hollowing out of labor markets. And so this winner-take-all effect you can see in the share of total income going to the top 1% of the income distribution. So the richest 1% in the world is getting extremely rich as a result of these winner-take-all effects. You can see this. I just selected a couple of countries to plot here for you. I included South Africa. You can see in South Africa, the top 1% had a wonderful field day. Since 1990, there's a sharp increase in the share of income in South Africa going to the top 1%. So clearly, since the early 1990s, this type of changes in industry concentration, in increase in markups, and the reduction of the labor share has really benefited only a very small number of people. So the COVID-19 pandemic will magnify all these effects that I just described. So we've seen the economists already predicting that because governments are splurging to keep big companies afloat, killing zombie firms will be much harder. And moreover, the government's budget will increase, its debt will increase, and with increasing state debt in South Africa already, that led to the country's bonds being declared junk status. It will lead to a very less dynamic kind of capitalism. So less competition, more concentration, more zombie firms, less innovation, and the rich getting richer. So we see already Amazon was already powerful, but it's now even increased its dominance online. And who were the big gainers during COVID? Well, there are some of these people, the gentlemen's names are here of the big firms. So Jeff Bezos of Amazon, his personal fortune increased by 72.6 billion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, recall that South Africa's entire COVID rescue package is about 50 billion. So just the COVID pandemic added much more to one person's personal wealth than the entire COVID rescue package in South Africa. So all this is made worse now by the fact that the technology that we have seen, the wonderful technology that we are using today as well, is used by the state to increase its surveillance. We live in a surveillance economy. And as Harari indicated, today it's possible with the algorithms and all the sensors that governments can 24/7 spy on all their citizens. You can read about it in there's much more books. I just gave you a sample here of the surveillance state, which is basically constructing digital prisons for the populations to live in. It's not only in China, where it is very visible already and very explicit, but also the US. It's also done by companies. And it's also in South Africa, this book by Jane Duncan, Stopping the Spies, Constructing and Resisting the Surveillance State in South Africa. So lots of bad outcomes. And the problem, as Harari said it, is that once these new powers during the COVID crisis has been taken by governments, they will be very reluctant to take these powers away. For instance, in the UK, they just voted to extend their emergency powers, even though it seems with most of the population in sight of being vaccinated, there is no emergency as such, right? So the big battle about privacy is really taking place now. And you can read in the Journal of Human Rights about state surveillance and the COVID crisis, which also includes not only state surveillance, but also censorship and information manipulation by governments. So we should be very aware of the new technocracy. We had an autocracy in the past, dominating. Now we have a technocracy. We don't have a democracy as such anymore if we have big governments meeting big corporations. So let's see what can be the dangers, for instance, in the case of South Africa. So let's think about South Africa's economic prospects and to condition. It's had the worst economic decline since World War II. It's skyrocketing unemployment. There's a 7% drop in GDP this year, in 2020. Government's bonds have been classified as junk. The government had to borrow on its knees from the IMF to meet its commitments. So not really going well in economic terms for the country. But miracle by miracle, the South African stock market reached an all-time high in March of this year. What's happening? Because stock prices reflect people's, view of what's going to happen with that companies. Suddenly, all of South Africa's companies having a wonderful future when we are really in the economic doldrums. And so, to look into this, you can look, for instance, at the share price of Anglo American, and you can see that it's really been stagnating until October 2020. Then suddenly it shot up. What happened on October in 2020? 15th of October, the president announces the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. So the interpretation of the market is that this is an extremely business-friendly recovery plan, that suddenly the prospects of Anglo-American is much better than that of the rest of the economy. One of the reasons, of course, is that most of the initiatives in the ERP were already on the card long before Corona. It's nothing Corona-specific. It doesn't take into consideration that the world has changed after COVID. It was already things that big business largely wanted to have been done for a long period of time. And so example is that the ERP only plans to add 3.6 million jobs in 10 years, compared to 3 million that were lost between only February and April, according to statistics, right? 1 trillion rand in infrastructure in 4 years with only 800,000 new jobs. This is a very extremely low employment ratio. It seems that a lot of these grants and investment money will be used to automate the business, reducing employment intensity, being very capital intensive, and profiting the owners of capital. So that's reflected already, I think, in the stock prices of the few concentrated companies in South Africa. We know that, of course, over history as well, as Saville has written very clearly, political power and the big corporates have always been very close to one another since whenever you can think about South Africa's history. So beware of big government beating big corporation, but not only in South Africa, also in Southern Africa. We now have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and lo and behold, almost immediately Google and Amazon want to talk to the chairperson or the secretariat to invest in the African Continental Free Trade area. So these big platforms are coming to Africa. And of course, the danger is that with very little and very weak personal data protection in Africa, this is going to be, they're going to mine Africa for data. Data is the new oil. This is going to increase and improve their business models. I'm sure Steve Bezos and the owners of Google will become quite rich from all the data and their services, and also the potential to stifle the development of digital platforms in Africa. Okay, only 8 countries in Africa have so far ratified the African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection. And in most countries, international cross-border data transfer don't even have to be noticed. So these shapeshifters that will come, an important one is that, is of course, that China. It's not only that Google and Amazon from the United States would want to mine all the data in Africa, it's also the Chinese. China has been investing in global manufacturing digital platforms. Their aim is at least to have 10 cross-sectoral industrial platforms by 2020, and they actually reached this already in 2019. And the danger is that if you allow a big digital platform to enter into your economy and work in your economy, you should be aware that the danger is that there are shapeshifters. You may think, this is an online search engine that we are allowing, or a marketing company coming in, but very soon they will move into manufacturing. So the danger, say, to the Eastern Cape's automobile industry or agricultural industry may come from an online search engine. And because you're not aware of that, you don't think that can happen, you will be caught by surprise. So the next big thing will be the USA global digital platforms, will be followed by Chinese-based digital platforms, and both are targeting the African Common Free Trade area. And it's difficult to predict its impact on competition because of shape shifting. So what can be done? Well, it cannot be business as usual. What I would like to say in this context of export promotion is that we should be trying to create, South Africa should be trying to create more superstar firms that are in manufacturing exporting. Because we have seen already that during the COVID crisis, the most resistant and resilient part of the economy with trade and exports of merchandise goods. The country is exporting more merchandise now than even before the crisis. It's completely recovered. And this is due largely to exporting merchandise goods, physical goods, agricultural goods, mining goods, and some manufacturing. It's largely been the farmers and the miners that have helped South Africa to reduce the impact of the pandemic on the macroeconomy. Even if they couldn't save it completely, they softened the impact quite a lot. So the farmers and the miners, not the financial industry, not the guys who are proclaiming the fourth industrial revolution, the farmers and the miners. And so the links with the Eastern Cape is important with agro-processing and automobile industry. But historically, in the last 20 years, South Africa has neglected merchandise exports and manufacturing exports, right? So how can we create new superstar export manufacturers in South Africa? Well, to realize that exporting really is a superstar activity. If you look at the export rank and log export value, these graphs show you from different countries that exports follow a power rule. This is to say that there are always big hits. So the first company who exports, the biggest exporter in the country, will typically export twice as much as the second ranked exporter, and 3 times as much as the third ranked exporter. So it's always a small number of companies with a small number of destinations that dominates exports in any country. And this means that there are big hits in exporting. So a country needs to find, to grow superstar firms, need to find a couple of big hits. And so, for instance, an example is that in South Africa, the top 3 manufacturing exporters are responsible for 23% of all manufacturing exports. And 90% of South Africa's exports are done by the top 20% exporters. So this top 20% or top 3 firms, they are South Africa's superstars of manufacturing. And I'm saying South Africa should look at growing and developing more superstar manufacturing exporters. How to do that? Well, paradoxically or ironically, perhaps using precisely big data methods and the digital economy, we can find these big hits. The problem historically, economists have argued, well, it's not possible because of information problems for governments to identify potential big hits. But yeah, the world has changed. Now with connectivity, with big data, with artificial intelligence, with algorithms, it's possible to have a much better information about potential big hits. And in this article that Martin Cameron and I wrote for UNIDO's Industrial Analytics Platform, we explain how big data can be used to identify opportunities for export-driven industrialization and how to find big hits. And Martin will speak after me in more detail to show also how after the geopolitical tensions of COVID and reconfiguration of global value chains after COVID, there may be opportunities for South Africa to grow and develop new export superstars in this context and use exactly the digital technology, the software that in so many instances are creating lots of uncertainties and lots of problems with competition. So on that note, I want to thank everybody. I'm looking forward to discussions and comments and further questions and issues. And I give back to the chairperson of the session. And I look forward also to listening to Martin explaining a little bit more about how we can use big data to discover superstar exporters for South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation that you have made, Professor.
Thank you, Wim.
Can you please be with us so that we can be able to take
can
questions?
Can you hear me, Wim?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes,
thanks,
okay. Right, so the chair didn't... I'm just going to continue. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Good afternoon to everybody. I know it's the after lunch shift, so it's always difficult to keep going at this point in time, but hopefully we keep it interestingly enough for yourselves. My talk's about the developments around trade and global geopolitical shifts that we are seeing. So Wim was talking about shape shifting. Here we're talking about the geopolitical and trade shifting that's happening in the world. I think the key message of the presentation, if we start with that, is when there's change, there's opportunity, and in order to utilize opportunity, quality and relevant information is required, and obviously then pragmatic action around that. And not to forget that while a lot of things change in the world, and we are living in dynamic times and uncertain times with COVID, at the same time, many things do not change. People still need to eat, people still wear clothes, etc. So maybe some of our habits and ways of doing things have changed, but the fundamentals have not changed in that sense. And we should not forget that when we are looking at it from a business perspective. So when we talk about China and the US, in the short term, with Biden coming to power, we don't really see anything changing in terms of the tensions between the US and China. It would seem that the US government has a bit of inertia regarding the stance against China for various reasons, as you all are probably aware, things like human rights, the issue around Hong Kong, markets like Taiwan being recognized or not, and also obviously the military presence, and then lastly, coronavirus. But a lot of these things have been happening and influencing relationships and trade and economic ties even before Corona was on the scene. In the UK, Europe context of Brexit, I think the reality of the matter is there are challenges towards China from the UK's perspective. At the same time, there are challenges with Brexit in terms of much less than what was expected, more focused on practicalities in terms of logistics. But the British are now trying to revive the Commonwealth links with Australia, New Zealand, and possibly India from a trade perspective. And at this stage, they also are battling to make sure that the economy stays open. Having said that, compared to other parts in the world, they're still doing very well. In terms of Australia, as an example, in the context of China, they were leading the call for investigation into the potential for COVID not being a natural phenomena. To today, we still don't have an answer exactly about that. But the reality of the matter is that China has responded very negatively, using trade as a tool and blocking a lot of the major primary commodities such as coal, barley, wine, beef, lobster, timber, copper, wheat, and cotton exports from Australia into China. So trade becomes a weapon in the modern day society in terms of retaliating and punishing the partners on the other side of the table if you're not happy with what they're saying, which is what China's been doing. But at the same time, China has been doing this to Australia even before COVID. They started with beef. The reality of the matter is, as Provim also mentioned, COVID has just placed a lens and a focus on a lot of these things and have actually caused a lot more attention to maybe lesser obvious actions that happened in the past. Then when we look at China, we see that China has joined the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Now you think AFCFTA, well, RCEP is massive. It represents more than 30% of the global trade, global production, and global population in the world. And within a very integrated and geolocated proximity of close area within China. So this is a massive development in the global space that's going to have impacts going forward that we should consider. And with the China BRI strategy of making sure that they focus on enabling infrastructure, they understand trade, they understand what it takes to trade. And you can see from their policy and their direction that they focus on those things that will actually enhance their abilities to get into and get products out of countries. The US under Trump left the Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, and as a result, China is now also eyeing moving into that space to become a really dominant geopolitical and geo-trade player in the world, which they basically are, if we are honest about it. And then, if we get to the AFCFTA, you'll see I've put a little elephant in the room on the screen there. While this is a big market, 1.3 billion people, we're not sure how that's going to translate into practice for actual traders today, tomorrow, and in the short to medium term. One of the challenges that we face is people underestimate Africa from a geopolitical and in terms of complexity. One of the speakers mentioned that earlier, as well as geospatial perspective in terms of the size of Africa and the dire lack of infrastructure connecting all of these peoples and the geographies on the continent of Africa. We have a huge deficit, and while on paper you can easily change things when it comes to trade agreements and things like tariffs, etc., you'll see at the bottom right there, the IMF has done a study where they showed that the access to finance, which is something that you can change with a pen, and tariffs are two major impacting factors in terms of reaping the benefits of the AFCFTA, credit being the most. But in the middle there, on the bottom right, you see logistics and infrastructure. The challenge with tariffs and credits and finance is, or the advantages are, you can sit in a room and sign a piece of paper, and that can change. But logistics and infrastructure needs to be built. It physically needs to be created. That doesn't happen overnight. And one of the previous speakers on the Q&A sessions, somebody mentioned the whole issue around logistics. This is key to Africa and unlocking the potential for the AFCFTA. If that's not going to happen, we're not going to see the benefits. But having said that, it's a good starting point, but it's necessary and not a sufficient condition to utilize and to reap the benefits of the AFCFTA if we don't move into the implementation, physical execution, and connecting Africa with quality, accessible infrastructure. So globally, we are seeing new paradigms emerging. China is serious in dominating the global trade space. You'll see the map on the right-hand side there. They are major trading partners with 124 countries in the world, whereas, for instance, the US only with 56. And The challenge with these kind of changes are that people generally, as it is a human trait for most people, struggle to change their minds and to adjust their mindsets when they actually experience new developments. And similarly, COVID has made changes to the world that some people want to deny or are still not acknowledging will actually have an impact. And the reality of the matter is there are many different indicators that show us that some fundamental shifts have happened in the way that people do business, in the way that business people are thinking about doing certain things. And you can see on the charts here, for instance, the decline in the tourism industry, the projected negative growths. But on the positive side for the companies, not necessarily for the consumers, the massive rise of the pharmaceutical companies. We now are creating these superstar pharmaceutical companies as a result of our misery that we have to pay for. But at the same time, there are some silver linings to COVID in terms of, for instance, the fast tracking of medical developments, the use of technology in that sense. While Provim said it did not predict the advent of or the emergence of COVID, there are some areas of technology application that has actually been fast-tracked as a result of COVID, and also more access. I think the ability to connect with people has changed just in the way that people are thinking of using technology, such as we are doing now. In the past, we would have gotten on an aeroplane, come to the event, had to spend the day there, then come back. And by all means, I do love the city and I love the province and I like to get out of my study. But the reality is it is much more productive to engage on a digital platform such as Provim from the Netherlands now, and other people all over the country and the province can connect. So you saw the yin and yang sign that I had in the beginning on my first slide. And in that sense, COVID and other developments are both opportunities and threats that we need to consider. And on a personal level, it's all about balance, also in the sense of using this technology, using the new things that have developed as a result of COVID, new ways of doing things, not becoming out-zoomed and unproductive and working too long hours because you're simply sitting in front of your computer and you don't have the coffee and the chat breaks, etc. So we have to be careful of that. But us humans are very flexible and adaptable. That's why we're still on the earth so many million years later, and the dinosaurs died out, so we will adapt and we will move on. Now, on the point of changing, Provim spoke a lot about shape-shifting changes that we are seeing happening, etc. And I like to use this slide just to get people thinking about it. And in an interactive session, I can ask the question, how long do you think it would have taken, or it did take, the street to change in New York? Here you see 1900 Fifth Avenue full of horse carts. Can you spot the automotive? There's a car in this crowd. And I'm highlighting the car for you so you can see where it is. If you zoom in a little bit, the quality of the photo, obviously, given the time it was taken, is not so good. But the point is, in this very busy street, it was full of horse carts and one car. The question is, how long did it take to change? How long did it take for this picture to invert? The reality of the matter is, it didn't take 20, 30, or 50 years. It only took 10, 13 years. Where now you see the same street, slightly lower angle, but you can see already in those 10 years as well the improvement in the quality of the photograph. Where's the horse cart? Well, it's there. So make no mistake, things change, and they change a lot faster than what we necessarily as humans can adapt or think about from a business perspective. And we have to change our minds about how fast things change. So with that in mind, just to focus on some opportunities, because ultimately this is what it's about. It's about exporting, looking for new opportunities. And on that topic, we find that our methodology that we use to look at trade opportunities considers many different factors. But a key factor that has been mentioned, and many of the speakers touched on it, is logistics and supply chains, connectivity, and the efficiency and access thereof. But before I go into that, just a point on the power law that Wim mentioned. In our analysis, we see that on the trade side, 6 countries typically supply into any partner country, so importing any 94% of products, if you look at the makeup of those products, 6 countries or less partners supply 80% or more of the value of those imports into any market. So the power law is very, very real in international trade as well. Now, if we look at the logistics question, an example of work that we're busy with for the UN on helping Cameroon. This picture that you see, the map shows green markets where Cameroon's major trading partners are. See how far away they are from Cameroon. And around Cameroon, from a value perspective, the trade value perspective, there's very little happening. If we look at the logistics, time cost implications of moving goods and containers within Africa, then we find that we can understand why that picture looks like it does. Obviously, it's a simplification in the sense there are also historical, political connections, developments, etc. But in recent times, we see that, for instance, to move a container from Cameroon to places like, which are technically close, DRC, Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, is more costly than moving that same container to China or Taiwan. And to get to Egypt or the Central African Republic or close by Equatorial Guinea will cost you the same and take the same effort than getting to the US or Brazil, as an example. So this is the reality that we deal with when we talk about Africa and what the AFCFTA will have to address to reap the benefits. So if we quickly run through in the last couple of minutes, opportunities, there are opportunities, and some of them are obvious, some of them are less obvious. We cannot go into the detail, but we can show you just briefly that, for instance, in the context of the EU and with the changes both towards China and the UK, one needs to look at the detail, but there are 26 markets in the EU that still represents much potential for South African products that meets a lot of criteria, which I'm not going to discuss now. 642 of those products at the 6-digit product level, spread over 26 sectors, and to the tune of what we call an untapped potential of about 486 billion South African rand. This is from the perspective of the Eastern Cape. And things like steel-related agriculture and food are major sectors that pop out, but you can see the spread across the types of products going to the EU or can go to the EU are a little bit broader. Then if we look at China as an example, we see about 400 products, 28 sectors, but about nearly half the potential, and a concentration in mining and minerals and agricultural products that are opportunities that we can definitely investigate and pursue, because China is resource hungry and they need to feed people. Although they produce a lot themselves, they still are one of the major food importers in the world as well. On the USA side, we've got about 455 products, 28 sectors, again, lower potential at about 150 billion rands, focused more on the higher value added types of products that are manufactured and exported from the Eastern Cape in that context. And when we get to the AFCFTA, we see the spread similar to that of Europe, 39 countries in this case that pose potential. Interesting to note that the northern part of Africa actually has a lot more potential than the middle and southern parts. And typically when we talk about Africa and in local terms, we kind of consciously or subconsciously automatically think of sub-Sahara Africa, but Africa actually goes all the way to Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria. And the value associated with this is only about 21 billion in the short to medium term, focused around steel, food, and agriculture. So there are potential opportunities. There will be more in the future, but it won't happen overnight. Remember, the EU took more than 40 years as a monetary union, and before that a trade bloc, to develop, and they are still evolving. They're still facing challenges. They're still struggling, as an example, with Brexit in the UK. But the point is that there's opportunity when you look at all the changes that we are experiencing at the moment. And if you are aware, acknowledge, and can react to these changes, you can utilize these opportunities. And ultimately, if you look at the numbers, don't forget that Europe is still our biggest trading partner. So a company wanting to make money cannot discount Europe. It's a huge opportunity for us. By that, I'm not saying do not focus on Africa. It's an and some, it's not an or, it's not either or. You do ands in trade and business. The more you deal, the more you will be able to deal, the more and the better you'll do business. And ultimately, you can contact Linda at the ECDC help desk, and they can assist you with more detail around these kind of questions and opportunities. So I hope that between myself and Provim, we've given you some alternative ways of looking at things, and also we try and look at things from an objectivity perspective as opposed to a hyped and political perspective. Yes, it's necessary. Yes, we have to focus on all of these things around the AFCFTA, but tomorrow, the next week, and the next month is not going to make a difference to any of our companies. So you should not discard everything else and think that the AFCFTA is now going to be the panacea and the silver bullet. It's going to take many years, but we will get there, and there will be huge potential, just not tomorrow. Thank you. Chair, we're back to you.
The next speaker.
As in the Asia Pacific region, and see how Hong Kong can serve as an international. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Billy Wong from the Hong Kong Trade Development Council Research Department. It's my pleasure to be here today to share with you the development here in Hong Kong as well as in the Asia Pacific region, and see how Hong Kong can serve as an international business hub to help you to promote your business in this part of the world. Well, for those who are not familiar with Hong Kong Trade Development Council, let me just say a few words about our organization. The Hong Kong Trade Development Council is set up by the Hong Kong government. Our primary role is to promote trade in goods as well as in professional services, including financial services. So, and also we want to promote Hong Kong as a business platform, helping business from around the world to do business in Asia region, in particular related to China mainland. And we have over 50 offices globally to help you to make up the business connections. And how do we promote trade in products? Basically through trade fairs. Before the pandemic, I would say, the normal time, we organize more than 30 physical trade fairs every year, and 5 of them are already the largest in the world, including electronics, watching clocks, gift and premium, jewelry, and lighting products. So you can ride on these big mega trade fairs to find your right business partners. Now, of course, because of the pandemic, we some of these physical trade fairs we can't go on further because of the travel restriction. But we move them online already. Particularly, say, for example, in the coming months, we are going to organize our Southern show both mainly online, but also we are hoping that we can also organize a small scale offline trade fairs as well. And also you can ride on these online trade fairs, which has already been receiving quite a good response from our exhibitors and buyers. About professional services. How do we promote professional service? Through organizing flagship conferences on different sectors. For example, our flagship Asian Financial Forum, basically targeting our financial services, will build up this platform for the financial service provider as well as the customers to meet each other, and also like the Asian Logistic Maritime and Aviation Conference and other internet IP trading forum, etc. So you can, if you are in the respective professional service, you can also ride on these conferences, build up your business connectivity in this part of the world. Well, going back to today's topic, Hong Kong as an international business platform, how we can help you to grow your business in this area. Some basic information about Hong Kong. Hong Kong itself is not a large market, I would say. Just look at this summary table. We have a small population, though we are a very densely populated city. We have around 7.5 million people, not a very huge market, but we do have a quite high consumption power. Say, for example, if you take our GDP per capita, we are having quite a relatively high level. So supporting a good demand for quality products, particularly people concerning about health and areas like that. So quality products should have a good market here also. Now, we have very low unemployment rate before the pandemic. And also one particularly interesting point, if you look at this, the last row of this chart, the number of visitors. Before the pandemic, we have a huge number of visitors every year, more than 55 million a year. So that creates a huge demand on products as well and services as well. And that also explains why Hong Kong can be an attractive place for new entrants, new brands coming into the Asia-Pacific region, because we have a huge flow of international tourists. Most of them came from the mainland China. So we attract Hong Kong as a good showcase for new brands entering into the Asia-Pacific market as well. Hong Kong is also a service-oriented economy. More than 93% of our GDP are services. We always say that Hong Kong's economy, we have 4 pillars. One is the trading and logistics sectors, one is the financial services, and one is our professional and other producer services, and the last major one is tourism. So you see, trading and logistics and financial service are very important to our economy, and also that is contributing to Hong Kong as an international business hub. According to our own statistics, in Hong Kong, we have nearly 4,000 regional headquarters and offices set up by multinational companies last year. And among these 4,000 regional headquarters and offices of multinational companies, about half of them are related to trading business. So you see, Hong Kong as a trading platform is very important. Why these multinationals set up their regional headquarters and offices here? Because they want to, solicit new business to manage their business in this Asia region, particularly with respect to China also. These regional headquarters came from, different parts of the world. In terms of our trading platform, according to World Trade Organization, Hong Kong, such a small city, we ranked number 8 in the world in terms of total trade. Most of them, 99% of them, are we call re-export trade. That is trade going through Hong Kong, maybe from mainland to the rest of the world, or from the rest of the world to China as well. So we are playing a re-export function role. But our trade is not just restricted to re-exports. Here we have a concept of what we call the offshore trade. That is, in simple terms, trade handled by Hong Kong companies or Hong Kong traders, but the flows of goods do not pass through Hong Kong physically. That means, say, for example, a trader in Hong Kong, they engage in a business transaction with our friends in South Africa. The products from South Africa can directly ship from South Africa to mainland cities, not going through Hong Kong, but the trade are handled by Hong Kong exporters or importers. That is what we call offshore trade. And according to Hong Kong government's estimation, the value of offshore trade already surpassed re-export since the year 2007. So you see, if taking into the consideration of the offshore trade value plus the re-export value, Hong Kong's ranking in world trade terms should rank even higher than the current number 8. So you see the important role of Hong Kong as an international trading platform. Hong Kong is also a regional hub in managing your supply chain. Just look at the lower part of this chart here, the second table here. It shows the potential share of respective regions, two-way trade between China and the respective region. Trade between China through Hong Kong with Asia Pacific region, for example, ASEAN, South Korea, Taiwan, increased dramatically over the last 10 years. So that also illustrates how Hong Kong is managing the supply chain within this region. Hong Kong is a regional distribution hub, particularly for electronic products. Say, for example, as the supply chain extend or production chain expand from mainland China to Southeast Asia or in other parts of the Asia Pacific region, Hong Kong's role as in managing this supply chain continued to become more and important. Hong Kong is also an important international financial center which contributes to the largest share to our GDP. Just the recently released Global Financial Center Index, Hong Kong is ranked the number 4th in the world as the 4th major global financial center. So you see how important we are and how diverse and services we are offering. Among the world's 100 largest banks, 78 of them have a presence in Hong Kong. We are also one of the largest foreign exchange market and one of the major stock market here. And over the last 10 years, Hong Kong has been one of the major first or second IPO center in the world. And this quality financial international center also support our trading business because you need to have banking services to settle your transaction. Hong Kong is also a platform for direct investment. According to UN's statistics, Hong Kong ranked number 3 in terms of inward stock of FDI. Now, Hong Kong is such a small place. It's natural we don't have that much investment opportunities here locally. Obviously, it is a result because of many of the multinational companies, they are using Hong Kong as a managing center for their foreign direct investment. So you see, Hong Kong not just a trading center, but also a center for managing foreign direct investment because we have good support from our financial services as well as our professional services. On the other hand, Hong Kong is also a main channel for Chinese companies going out and for foreign companies going into China. Hong Kong's share in China's inflow of FDI accounts for 70%. And some of them are coming from multinational companies going through Hong Kong into China. And on the other hand, Hong Kong took up 58% of Chinese companies' outward direct investment. And of course, naturally, many of these mainland Chinese companies are using Hong Kong as a regional headquarter function in managing their outward direct investment. And, that is why Hong Kong is also a good platform for foreign companies in finding the right, partners, business partners in China, here in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a gateway to China. So China's business is very relevant and important to the development of Hong Kong as a platform. The recently released 14th Five-Year Plan of China, can give us some highlights on some potentials here in this part of the world. I just want to briefly draw two major directions. One is what we call the dual circulation strategy adopted by China. Under this circulation strategy, on one hand, China is to adopt a growth model emphasizing on domestic demand as the primary driver of growth, with external demand as complement. In encouraging domestic demand, what does that mean? China would continue to expand the middle income class size, the share. So that will what? Generate more consumption demand. Not just consumption demand, but upgrading consumption. The middle class income people will demand for quality products as well as quality services. That will also encourage more imports from overseas, in particularly for quality products. So that will create new business opportunities under this domestic demand growth model. On the other direction is in China's industrial and technology upgrade and environmental protection, the emphasis on environmental protection. That will create more business or cooperation opportunities in innovation and digitalization. Say, for example, the application in smart manufacturing, in fintech, etc. The green movement, green finance, green tech, energy-saving products will be another area for high growth, high potential. So this is something I think under the 14th Five-Year Plan, overseas companies, particularly South African companies, should pay attention to. Coming to another development I would like to introduce to you is what we call the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area, in simple terms, GBA, Greater Bay Area. And what is it? It is a bay area at the southern tip of China, around the Pearl River Delta region, what we call the Greater Bay Area, GBA. This region basically composed of Hong Kong, Macau, and 9 other cities within China or on the mainland around the Pearl River Delta region. So these 11 cities together compose to form the GBA, the Greater Bay Area. And this GBA has now already become a national development strategy support from the central government. And what is the objective of the GBA? First, I think 2 major points we need to pay attention. That is, the positioning of GBA is to become a globally influential international innovation and technology hub. Okay, the key word here is international. Innovation and technology development would be another major area for China's national development strategy. International here is through the GBA development, China wants to leverage on this GBA to engage more international cooperation. So foreign companies can make use of this GBA, particularly for Hong Kong, to engage in this innovation and technology development. Another positioning is the GBA to be an important support pillar for the Belt and Road Initiative. Belt and Road, I think you have heard about that. To me, the Belt and Road Initiative is another round of globalization, another round of mainland companies going up. GBA as the most international and open area in China it will serve a very good purpose in facilitating flows coming in and going out of China with respect of the rest of the world. And the last point here, positioning here, is the quality living circle. That will, echo what I've just mentioned about the quality, demand of quality products as well as services. And that will create a lot of business opportunities. And now about Hong Kong's status and role within this GBA. According to central government's plan, Hong Kong will continue to play a very significant role in this GBA development. As I mentioned, the GBA as a whole is the most market-oriented, most opening up region or areas within mainland China. And within this GBA, Hong Kong is also the most internationalized business center. So Hong Kong will continue to serve, or even in becoming a more important respect to the GBA's development as an international financial, transportation, and trading center. So you see, this will further, enhance or strengthen Hong Kong's role as an international business center. More important, another development area is to enhance Hong Kong as an international asset management center as well, particularly with respect to the GBA ever expanding middle class background. More and more people are having the need to have the assets being managed. So right on this, Hong Kong's role is important. So I have identified here some potential business cooperation opportunities for your consideration. One, as I mentioned earlier, innovation and technology would be a very major growth driver for China. So here is how to pooling together international innovation resources, including talent, IP trading, and commercial application of your I&T would be, another very good cooperation opportunities here. Financial services, green finance is one area. A cross-boundary financial service between Hong Kong and other mainland cities, say, for example, in asset management, is another growth area. Consumer market, needless to say, China's middle income class will continue to expand. And, with a huge population in this GBA, more than 70 million, a large share of them are already in the bracket of middle income class. So they are looking for quality consumer goods as well as quality consumer services. And that will create a lot of another direction of business opportunities. And the quality living circle will create more demand for higher education and medical services, particularly with respect to silver market because of the aging population there. And environmental protection is also another area that we need to pay attention. Definitely, China is going to, put more emphasis on green development, not just the environmental protection services, but also like consumer products which are energy saving would be a high growth area in the GBA. So I'm just only briefly talk about the opportunities and development in Hong Kong as well as the Asia Pacific region here, and respect to the GBA and China. If you need more market information, you can always visit HKTEC's research portal. The portal is open to everybody looking for market information in the Asia Pacific region, in particular with respect to China as well as the rest of the world. Now, we also have a consultancy office in South Africa. You need to build up more business connectivity. Don't hesitate to contact our office. Thank you very much. And I hope we can keep in touch and hope Hong Kong as a business platform can help you to penetrate into this part of the world's market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Billy Wang. for that presentation. Mr. Biluwang has been a very persistent and important partner to enable our businesses from South Africa to penetrate China and the Asia Pacific region through Hong Kong. You know, as he indicated, number of opportunities for even accessing other market via Hong Kong, even with your goods not having to even reach Hong Kong. Financial market, financial services, you can get financial services, you know, from that hub, which is a very important financial hub in the Asia Pacific region. But before that, we had a very exciting presentation on the ICT fourth industrial revolution. Professor Vim is just destroying the myth that there is a fourth industrial revolution. He said all of the industrial revolutions before were characterized by higher increase in labor productivity. But with this time around, we don't have labor productivity. You know, instead we've got software companies, online platforms, and brands that are actually eating up the opportunities and subordinating other companies to their marketing strategy. And all these companies that have been the leaders in the past couple of decades now find themselves having to be subordinated to these software companies. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this session, but I will allow for one or more questions for those who have joined us online and those that are still available here. I see that now for the time of the day there is already fatigue, but let me allow for one or two questions. I think also I've also indicated that presentations will be available. They are loaded, they are recorded. All these presentations will be made available because there are major opportunities contained in this presentation. But I think we have come to the end of these sessions today. Thank you very much from our technical team that have done a sterling job in making sure that in the difficult environment of having to manage a hybrid event, we are able to connect speakers that are not even sitting in South Africa across the borders. What is important today is that the exhibition hall is still open. There are also business consultations that are happening at the exhibition hall downstairs. Tomorrow, it's going to be an exciting day. We'll be focusing mainly on opportunities from various regions of the world, from within the African continent. We're not going to talk about the agreements like Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and opportunities from Brexit. We're not talking about 4IR, but we are talking about opportunities that are presented from various regions. It's very important for our buyers, for our producers, our companies, the session for tomorrow. We'll start with Ghana. We'll have a presentation from Guinea, export opportunities to Ethiopia, export opportunities to Lesotho, export opportunities into the USA, opportunities in Australia. The chairperson of Australia Africa Chamber of Business will be presenting that, and opportunities in the United Arab Emirates. Mr. Dion Di Mello will be doing that, working for the Trade DP. A lot of opportunities. So tomorrow our presentation will be focusing on opportunities that are coming from various regions. I was going to allow, maybe let me take this opportunity, Mr. Ron Govender, my colleague, but I'll already do the wrap up. Tomorrow we are starting at 9 a.m. It's still a hybrid event. As you can see, a lot of our speakers will be presenting away from here, but we will still utilize this venue tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp we are starting. We nearly lost time, especially from the first session this morning, but we are hopeful that tomorrow, because there are a lot of presentations tomorrow, with all of the opportunities that will be presented, financial institutions will then come later to talk about the instrument to finance trade for all of the companies that wish to trade and export to the various regions where opportunities have been identified. From our side and my team, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for participating, and thank you very much for our host, Councillor Vaipuom, who has stayed with us for the rest of the conference up until we see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.